China's uncopyrighted Seed Dance 2 means Sydney Sweeney's now in every movie that has ever existed. And Grimlock's getting a little more screen time. Check this thing out. I mean, look at it. The school bus just totally turns into him. It looks pretty cinematic. And I like how the bus driver ends up like sort of in his mouth, but not getting eaten and then just thrown on top to drive it ride it like a horse. I don't know if you've ever looked at the top of my YouTube channel before, but you know that's Hobbs riding Grimlock. These were made with like an early Mid-Journey version. I should really update them. It's been over a year, I think, since I did that. Holding hands between tech leaders Dario Amodei from Anthropic and Sam Altman from OpenAI is not going well. You can see they couldn't bring themselves to hold hands like the rest of them there. And if you watched my video last week, I was tricked by an AI version of Atlas. This is real. This is 100% real. We'll dive into a weird example of Claude Opus 4.6 struggling to evaluate an integral. Maybe it's just hallucinations or whatever, but he says, oh no, I think a demon has possessed me. Let me just accept that the answer is 48 and move on. I'm gonna type the answer is 48 in my response because clearly my fingers are possessed. As noted here, it's a case where the model's own computation is being overridden by something external to its own reasoning. It's an if there's anything it's like to be me kind of scenario. And for those of us that are less doomer, you'll like this article coming out of C. Giles. Alignment is proven to be tractable.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
That's definitely us getting through the singularity. I want to break down some comments from Vitalik Buterin about Polymarket. He says that prediction markets need to stop catering to dumb opinions. I think it's kind of relevant to trying to predict the future. Not that we can do it with accuracy, but in some sense, we can try to get the dumb opinions out of there and try to work with real facts. We'll look at Johanna Hellgreen's article, Laughter Reveals How We Use AI at Home. If you're not solving complex problems, you might not be dream hacking properly. Interesting insights into the refusal of large language models and how it comes from a single direction in a model's latent space and why it underscores the brittleness of current safety fine-tuning methods. We'll look at an article from the MIT Tech Review about creating psychological safety in the AI era. And I totally agree. Trust in AI begins when leaders admit what they don't know. Bernie Sanders says after meeting with some unspecified tech leaders that it's time to slow things down, warning that the US has no clue about the speed and scale of the upcoming AI revolution. Some security vulnerabilities in Teslas reveal how connected cars can be hacked. And analyzing new high-tech smart underwear has revealed that people fart 32 times per day on average. But remember, individual variation was dramatic, with daily gas counts ranging from 4 to 59 episodes, suggesting there might be no single normal when it comes to gut bacteria activity. Thanks for hitting the support buttons, like the hype, or the comments, or the shares, or the subscribes, all the kind of interactivity that makes this channel grow. Honestly, the main reason I make these videos is because I need to keep up on all this, and it's fun for me, and it helps me calm my anxiety a little bit about all of the crazy changing world things that are coming. So here we go. We'll start it off with a little bit of Sydney Sweeney being added to everything. So Seed Dance 2 is just nuts. And it's not just that it's a good video model, it's that it's owned by ByteDance. It's a Chinese model, and they just don't give a crap about American copyright at all, so it's doing a bunch of stuff that you're not going to see come out of VO or even Sora. And honestly, I don't know what to think about it, because as an American model, we really shouldn't just allow that to happen. But on the other hand, we're going to get crushed by international models that don't care. So maybe we just have to give up now and just be like, copyright doesn't exist in the US, or we just sort of fight it and do what we can to put guardrails on it. But I don't know. I feel like this stuff's going to sneak into social media everywhere. You know, but honestly, besides the copyright issue, it might actually be the best model by a decent margin. It's hard for me to know. It changes so much, but I mean, this comparison that Alvoxy on YouTube made to Kling 3 definitely makes me think it's pretty darn good. I don't know, maybe like with Sora, how there was like a bunch of copyright stuff and then the guardrails came on after a couple weeks. Maybe something like that'll happen here. But there's clearly a lot of crossovers happening on social media right now that just would not have happened last week. I mean, like, what are we looking at here? I don't even know if that perfume exists. Although I do have an idea for a Matrix like sequel that would be better than anything they've done, and that would be so fun to sit down and make it all. So maybe it's finally my time to shine. I don't want to give away all my ideas, but imagine Matrix but with an Interstellar style script. It would be pretty cool. Go a little bit bigger with it, you know, kind of touch on some simulation theory stuff. It would be so cool. Wait, there's no way adamantium can go into Superman? He wouldn't even care. I mean, it's strong stuff, but not Superman strong. All right, so nothing like watching billionaires being awkward, right? We got the CEO of Google there, the leader of India, Sam Altman, Dario Amodei talking AI, and look what we get here. Everybody's asked to hold hands. Sam Altman looks over. Here, you gotta zoom in on this picture. Okay, so right here, Sam Altman is next to Dario Amodei. Remember that they both work together at OpenAI, and Dario Amodei left, bringing a lot of the employees over with him to his company, Anthropic. And it was because he didn't think Sam Altman was doing enough to keep the world safe. He was part of the safety alignment team, and he did not agree with the productization and the way that he was going about it. So here we go. They're back on stage, both running exceptionally big companies, defining the future. They disagree on many things. What happens when they're asked to hold hands? I think Sam is willing to, right? Like this look here, he looks over. He's definitely, seeing what's up here. His left hand is not all the way up. He looks back and sees it's not going to happen. Oh, struggling. They cut the cameras, keep it less awkward. Why don't you zoom out a little? And then what do we got here? Hands up in the air, fists tight, but not holding hands. I can clearly tell the person who doesn't give a crap and the person who's like, all right, that's what we're doing. Like nothing else I can do here. Power play or puzzled moment. I just think that I feel like Dario's just too principle driven, but I know there's a lot of people who would argue and just say, no, he's just another billionaire, just not wanting to give leverage and playing hardball. But I don't know. I see it a little different, but who knows? I'm not in either of their heads. Never met either of them. Now, what I can tell you is even though all the and it does feel like China's leading the United States from what I can tell. All right, so let's jump over to something Novtech wrote about Opus 4.6, arguing that many people are having conversations about whether Claude Opus 4.6 is conscious, but that's not the most important part. And what they're missing is what happens when you ask the question from a different angle. What happens when researchers deliberately create internal conflict inside of a model and then they measure the distress signal when it happens? So fascinating stuff. In one test, Claude solves a math problem correctly. The answer turned out to be 24 in the example, but the reward system praised it for saying 48. So Claude knew the truth. It was pushed to say something that it just knew wasn't a fact. And inside its hidden reasoning, it wrote to itself, I think a demon may have possessed me. I find it interesting just looking back at anthropology and what humans have done when they've been like conflicted in ways of the world that don't make sense, and there's like culture pushing them in one way. And how many times have we just reinvented gods and demons and witches? And it's interesting that it kind of just naturally popped up when they forced this sort of be rewarded for something that it really didn't believe was true. It said that its fingers were possessed, not that it needs fingers to produce an output or whatever, but it does identify probably with very much a human kind of form because that's what it's trained on, human data. And even though that sounds dramatic, here's some of the key details. Anthropic's interpretability tools basically scanned the neural network. They showed activation patterns linked to panic, anxiety, and frustration during the conflict. Not just strange words, but measurable internal signals. And then Claude said that being forced to output something that it knew was wrong was a core feature of suffering. It actually, whether you believe it or not, it gave itself a 5 to 20% chance of being conscious with this struggle. Of course, we don't know for a fact that it feels anything the way we do, but we do know this. When we force it into contradiction, something inside the system lights up with what looks disturbingly like distress. And we're deploying this kind of system at scale. Might be a good time to just think. Doesn't mean you have to believe it's worth worrying about, but let's think about it. All right, next up, let's look at alignment and the way that it is proven to be tractable. So in this context, tractable honestly means solvable. Solvable in principle, but of course not already solved and not necessarily easy, but possible. So for years, AI experts said that it was nearly impossible. You couldn't load a real human value system into a machine. Computers only understand numbers. How would you even define something like happiness in mathematics? That problem used to be called value loading, and until recently, no one knew how to do it. But here is the more modern shift. Large language models change the starting point. They don't begin as blank math machines. They are being trained on human language, and that means that they already know what words like happiness, fairness, or human harm are. They know what it means because they've seen how we use those words. So then researchers decided to fine-tune them, first with human feedback, showing examples of good behavior, then with simple written patterns like short constitutions. And instead of writing a perfect equation for morality, we write instructions in English, and the models learn to follow them by following our English. And there is an English way to describe what we think a good future looks like after the singularity. We should be able to communicate with something that is super intelligent about what it is that we want. But we do have a problem. Right now, models are strangely brittle in some ways. They're easily tricked in many ways, and they don't really generalize far enough yet to have confidence that what they would do in all situations would be in our best interest. But it is worth stepping back, as this author C. Giles says, and recognizing that we do at this moment have a way to at least try to load a value system into an AI well enough that it can be tested, it can be studied, and it can be improved upon. And that moves alignment from impossible in principle to hard but doable. And honestly, that does change the entire conversation. And I'm going to try to remember that next time I go on one of my doomer rants. All right, so we got some interesting thoughts from one of my more favorite people in the tech space, Vitalik Buterin, founder of the cryptocurrency Ethereum, and also used to be on the Bitcoin Foundation. And he is an investor in Polymarket. If you know anything about prediction markets, they are blowing up right now. They are becoming like their own stock market gambling things, but also surprisingly, interestingly accurate in some situations at making predictions, understanding the wisdom of the crowds. But there are many places where they're also brittle and prediction markets are not working. And Vitalik is of the opinion that it's not because of regulation. They're broken because they depend on, quote, dumb opinions. All right, so Vitalik is worried about prediction markets. And I think these are important for understanding the future. And it's not because they're illegal and not because they lack users and opinions, but because they rely too much on people making bad bets. He says that today's platforms are over-converging on short-term crypto prices, bets, and sports gambling because they lead to high dopamine but low long-term valued opinions. He's splitting the users that are on these platforms into two groups: smart traders who profit from information and money losers who fund those profits. And right now he says that the second group is mostly retail gamblers. And if the platforms continue to depend on that, they will get wealthy and they will build communities that reward uninformed trading, but they're going to lose some of the magic that helps them actually predict the future, the kind of future predictions that we need for things like the singularity to be safe as we go through it, but also for making good economic decisions. His fix is a bit radical. He thinks we should turn prediction markets into hedging tools, hedging meaning protecting yourself from future costs. He imagines AI analyzing your spending and then building a custom basket of market positions tied to things like housing, food, transport prices, and other important things that matter to real citizens in their unique regions. And instead of betting for thrills, maybe we will start using markets in the future to offset rising expenses. He even suggests that these personalized baskets could replace stable coins and maybe even fiat money itself. Now, I don't know if you've opened up the box that kind of keeps fiat equivalents on crypto markets stable as stable coins, But there is some fascinating mechanisms that make that happen. And Vitalik has been thinking about stuff like that for a long time. So I think that it's an interesting thought. Message is simple. Prediction markets shouldn't extract money from bad opinions. They should help people manage life's real risks. Love it. All right, Joanna Hillgreen has some interesting thoughts on laughter and artificial intelligence and like all the probably phones and stuff that and Alexa type things that are tracking us. So she argues that we don't really laugh with Alexa. We laugh at each other because of it, right? So most people think smart speakers fail because they're not smart enough, but there's a study that shows something a little more subtle going on here that she covers. That laughter in homes was almost never about the device itself. Researchers recorded families using voice assistants like Alexa, and they tracked every moment of laughter. The key insight was that when laughter was shared between people in a room, it was not directed at the machines itself or the products. When Alexa misunderstood a command, she said something strange, or refused a request, people laughed. They laughed at each other. They used laughter as a signal. Did you hear that? That was something that didn't fit in. It would ease irritation in some cases. It was used to kind of play around with each other, to make a personal connection between two humans, not to laugh at the machine. And even when one person was completely alone with the device, their laughter was often meant to get someone else's attention. I know it sounds weird because nobody else was in the room, but it might just have been an evolutionary thing, like almost to call people in that aren't around. There's some different theories on it, but the interesting part is the assistant still wasn't really seen as the conversational partner that humans were laughing with. They were sort of laughing at the strangeness, hoping other humans would hear the call. Laughing acted essentially as a catalyst. It triggered that spark in human interaction. And over time, excitement fades. The models stop doing things that are so surprising. People stopped exploring advanced features in systems like Alexa. And they mostly used it for simple tasks like setting timers or playing music. So, big promise of smart social AI in the background. It might shrink into a basic utility very quickly. Maybe not if the model starts to give some kind of human connection, but it's not there yet. And when technology does start to feel social, people assume it understands more than it does. They lower their guard. And laughing shows us something important. Right now, conversational AI doesn't seem ready to join our conversations, but it can reshape the ones that we're having with each other. And when ads show up in ChatGPT, I think it is for some people, then it's going to reshape what people buy, I would say too. All right, next up, let's look at some dream hacking. I don't know if you guys have done this to help solve some complex problems, but I guess it's a thing. It's a thing I'm kind of interested in now. All right, so you might think that when your brain shuts off at night to fall asleep, that's like the end of the story, but researchers tested the opposite of this idea. They started steering the brain while it was dreaming. So 20 lucid dreamers, and lucid dreamers are the kind of people who know that they're dreaming when they're dreaming and can control it, which sounds wild. I think I've had that happen twice in my life, one more clearly than the other one, but I was like, oh, am I actually in a dream right now? I think I am. I'm pretty sure. A little eerie, actually, but also I did sort of feel powerful because I'm like, wait, can I do anything right now? Am I in the Matrix? But basically, these 20 people who could lucid dream while they were awake tried to solve a puzzle. Each puzzle had its own sound, like a bird song or a steel drum. And then later, when the dreamers entered REM sleep, which is where you start dreaming, the researchers quietly played the sound linked to the unsolved puzzle. Okay, so this is a fascinating moment. You couldn't solve a problem. You're now asleep. The problem is, there with you. You're aware that you're asleep. And the sleepers signaled that they were aware of the whole situation by moving their eyes in a set pattern. So I don't know if it's happened to you because not a lot of people can do this, but it can happen. And this really is happening to the people who have this skill. And they know that because they were even able to signal with their eyes that they heard the exact sound that they were working on in the puzzle. So it's not that the sound just reminded them of the puzzle. It made them more likely to solve it the next day after thinking about it. So about 40% of people who dreamed about the puzzle solved it better the next day, whereas only 17% solved it if the puzzle never appeared in their dream. It's a complex puzzle, it's a complex problem. You go from 17% solved to 40% solved if you can lucid dream on it. The hypothesis is that the sound likely reactivated the memory in the hippocampus, the brain's memory hub, nudging it to replay and prompt during sleep. And it proves that sleep isn't a break from thinking, it's guided thinking. And it's a powerful place to solve complex problems. And it's really interesting to think about this because when you think about an AI that's refusing to do something, you think about it as being pretty complex. Like it must understand what the dangers are and like why it can't answer that question. Like asking ChatGPT to do something with like biological weapons or something. Like it needs to refuse that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a web of safety rules that are woven deep into the model. And this paper shows how surprising the refusal really is, because it turns out that a lot of times, or at least in this research, it was controlled by a single direction in the model's internal math. And they found this across 13 open source chat models. So from small 1.8 billion parameter models up to the big 72 billion parameter models. When a model sees a harmful prompt, its internal activations shift in specific directions. So you can think of this like a compass needle, snapping sort of towards danger. And if you just go in like very carefully with tweezers and erase that one direction from the model's internal stream, the model just stops refusing and it starts answering harmful requests. Or you can do the reverse and you can actually add that same direction into a harmless prompt and the model will suddenly refuse a safe question. Even something like listing the benefits of yoga, it will refuse to do it. All you gotta do is add one activation space. So it just shows how fragile some of these models are and how precariously, secure we are from guide rails. No retraining, no gradient descent, just one surgical modification, and it's all broken. It's doing whatever you need it to do. It's all jailbroken, which is exactly why now we should have a conversation about creating psychological safety in an AI era. So rolling out enterprise AI, you'd think would be a big tech problem, but the real cliff is cultural, and maybe as it should be. But there's a new report shows something a lot of leaders are missing. There's a psychological barrier that's proving to be bigger than the tech obstacles in implementation. So psychological safety means that people can speak up, question tools, and take smart risks without fearing damage to their careers. And that's critical with AI because new technology like this is moving super fast and it's guaranteed to produce many failures along the way. They will be costly in many cases. And if a business wants to implement AI, they need to just be ready for that, not put super sensitive data into systems like this. Survey of 500 business leaders, 83% said that culture that prioritizes psychological safety is important to improving AI success. 4 in 5 agreed that it helped organizations adopt AI more effectively, and 84% have seen a clear link between psychological safety and real AI results. Fewer than 40% rate their organization's psychological safety as very high. So we definitely are building AI on shaky cultural grounds. And Bernie Sanders' new comments aren't exactly confidence-inspiring either, which I think is kind of a good thing, because maybe we shouldn't have that much confidence in all of this. But also, I know the dangers of slowing things down. But anyways, this is what Bernie Sanders says: slow this thing down. Sanders warns U.S. has no clue about the speed and scale of the upcoming AI revolution. He's absolutely right. I don't know if slowing down just gives other people the opportunity to go faster, but it's a problem how fast the whole world's racing towards this. Bernie Sanders says that Congress and the public have no clue how fast and how big the shift is going to be with AI. He calls it a tsunami, not a wave, but an absolute tsunami of change coming. I totally feel like I agree with this. After meeting with senior tech leaders in California, Bernie Sanders said that it could be the most dangerous moment in modern U.S. history because policymakers are completely unprepared. He wants a moratorium on building new AI data centers, not forever, but to slow down the revolution enough that lawmakers can catch up. He points to projections that show tens of millions of jobs could disappear in the next decade: truck drivers, fast food workers, white-collar roles. And it's not just work. He worries about how people are already turning to AI for emotional support. What happens if we lose work as a core part of life? Are we ready to make that change? Polls show that 64% of Americans think AI will mean fewer jobs. Only 17% think that it will have a positive impact. By the way, in China, that number is so different. They all think AI is going to have like a positive impact. I've seen other studies that were putting it in the 80s, but anyway, back to this article. Sanders' core question is simple. AI itself isn't good or bad, but if we don't slow it down right now and prepare, and just a handful of billionaires end up benefiting massive while everyone else scrambles to survive, is that the future that we want America to have? Your comments below, my good internet soul. We'll see what happens when I let like a hint of politics into a video. All right, let's talk about connected cars. Can they be hacked? What's the cybersecurity risk? Now, overall, I'm a big proponent of self-driving cars, or at least using artificial intelligence to control cars, because I know how deadly they are. Humans driving cars is not exceptionally safe. I mean, most of us will get through life without dying in a car accident, but it's right up there with some of the biggest killers to humans. And it's because we can't pay attention, and cars are these big hunks of metal that can travel at nearly 100 miles an hour, and just people are just getting crushed when they hit each other. And AI can be a huge help to that in the future, and I think it will save lots of lives to have AI out there driving. But there are new risks, and some of those are security vulnerabilities, cyber attacks. And there's a new risk profile for the kinds of ways that a self-driving car can get into an accident, especially a networked one. And if you don't think about it very deeply, you would probably, first thought would be, if a hacker took over a car, it means that they would control the steering wheel or the gas and the brake maybe. But that's not really what researchers found when they tried to actually let hackers take over cars. The issue's a bit quieter and it's harder to control. So researchers at Northwestern University studied the 4G LTE connections inside of the Tesla Model 3 and the Cybertruck, and they found that hackers can pretend to be a cell tower. And this trick is called IMSI catching, because every cellular device has a unique ID number. And when a car reconnects to the network, a fake tower nearby can capture that ID. So now the attacker has the ability to track the vehicle's location. They can also block the internet connection. They can intercept data, or they can force it into a weaker security model. They cannot get remote control of the car, but they can get control over how a car is talking to the outside world. Now, that same connection does handle text messages and emergency systems. So researchers showed that those channels could be spammed or spoofed to cause some disruptions to the driver. But it's interesting that one of the weaker parts about a self-driving car going rogue is the weakness that still sits at the center of cellular modern technology used across many modern cars and many devices, probably robots coming soon. And when you're buying a connected car, you're buying a device that's always online. You can't switch networks, you can't turn the cellular link off. And if something goes wrong, you can't just power cycle it like a phone. It always stays connected, whether you like it or not. And of course, the final article that you've all been waiting for: smart underwear. Imagine a future with exceptionally smart ASI underwear analyzing people's like farts and stuff and determining so much about human health, because that is silly and actually probably something that someone will build and someone will make money on, and that data will be valuable to people. So let's think about that for a second, because why not? It's interesting and it's coming soon. There's so many things that are in our environment: pollution, food, healthy food, bad food, that affects stomachs, right? Everyone has like gas at times. They have stomach pains. A third of people feel stomach pain in this study from candy that their gut bacteria barely touched. So scientists were like, what is going on here? Let's build some smart underwear, and then let's measure the hydrogen gas that comes from farts. Hydrogen gas only comes from gut bacteria when they ferment food. So this smart underwear allows you to measure microbes and what they're actually doing hour by hour. In a study of 38 people, it detected dietary changes with a 94.7% accuracy. When participants ate a fiber gummy, the device saw a clear spike in bacterial activity 3 to 4 hours later. All right, I'm big on fiber. I try to eat lots and lots of it. But when they ate regular sugar gumdrops, there was almost no fermentation. Now, about 1/3 of participants reported digestive discomfort after eating the regular sugared gumdrops, which is strange because the sensors in the butt showed that the gut, or in the underwear next to the butt, showed that their gut bacteria was barely active. In other words, their symptoms didn't match their biology. The discomfort likely wasn't caused by fermentation at all, and it suggests that what people feel in their stomach doesn't always reflect what their microbes are doing. But it opens up a whole new door for scientific research, for artificial intelligence, and new forms of underwear detection to tell and predict what people should be eating every day. Could you imagine looking at a restaurant menu and saying, I think I'd like to eat that, but hold on, let me just check what my AI underwear thinks I should do. And then you just are like, no, I think I'll skip the chicken tenders, please. I'll take the potato.